नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्या संप्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहितः प्रज्ञानघनः प्रत्यगर्थो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वं यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत् तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथा मा गृधः कस्य स्विद्धनं कुर्वन्नेवेह कर्माणि जिजीविषेच्छतं समाः। एवं त्वयि नान्यथेतोऽस्ति न कर्म लिप्यते नरे। असुर्यानाम ते लोका अन्धेन तमसावृताः तांस्ते प्रेत्याभिगच्छन्ति ये के चात्महनो जनाः। अनेजदेकं मनसो जवीयो नैनद्देवा आप्नुवन् पूर्वमर्षत् तद्धावतोऽन्यानत्येति तिष्ठत् तस्मिन्नपो मातरिश्वा दधाति। तदेजति तन्नैजति तद्दूरे तदवन्तिके तदन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तदु सर्वस्यास्य बाह्यतः। यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मन्येवानुपश्यति सर्वभूतेषु चात्मानं ततो न विजुगुप्सते। यस्मिन् सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मैवाभूद्विजानतः तत्र को मोहः कः शोक एकत्वमनुपश्यतः। सपर्यगाच्छुक्रमकायमव्रणम् अस्नाविरं शुद्धमपापविद्धं कविर्मनीषी परिभुः स्वयंभूर्याथा तथ्यतोऽर्थान् व्यदधाच्छाश्वतीभ्यः समाभ्यः। अन्धन्तमः प्रविशन्ति ये विद्यामुपासते ततो भूय इव ते तमो य विद्याया गुङ्रताः। अन्यदेवाहुर्विद्यया अन्यदाहुरविद्यया इति शुश्रुमधीराणां येनस्तद्विचचक्षिरे। विद्यां चाविद्यां च यस्तद्वेदो भयं सः अविद्यया मृत्युं तीर्त्वा विद्ययामृतमश्नुते। अन्धन्तमः प्रविशन्ति ये सम्भूतिमुपासते tato bhuya iva te tamo yau sambhutyagrataha anyadevahus sambhavat anyadahurasambhavat iti shushrumadhiranam yenastadvichachakshire sambhutincha vinashancha yastadvedo bhayam saha vinashena mrityun tirtva sambhutyamritamashnuti hiranmayena patrena satyasyapi hitam mukham tattvam pushannapavrinu satyadharmaya drishtaye पूषन्ने कर्षे यम सूर्य प्राजापत्य व्यूह रश्मीन् समूह तेजो यत्ते रूपं कल्याणतमं तत्ते पश्यामि योऽसावसौ पुरुषः सोऽहमस्मि। ॐ शांति शांति। So now we are nearing the end of this Ishavasya Upanishad. Just 2 mantras from this Upanishad and then 2 additional mantras to be studied are left, which we will complete hopefully this month. The reason we pronounce all these mantras which we have studied again and again at the beginning of every section is that we should understand it to be a form of japa. I have already talked a lot about japa in one of my previous classes. In fact, when Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, he starts speaking about sadhana, about methods, about techniques. The very first sutra of the 2nd chapter, the chapter of methods, discusses Kriya Yoga. Yoga in action, yoga in physical, verbal, and mental action. So he speaks about 3 types of Kriya Yoga. And the second one of these, the second form of Kriya Yoga, an action that is a means, is a preparation to yoga, which means meditation. So verbal action, under verbal action, he takes Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya, which means studying about the self. It includes everything. It includes the discussion that we have because we are studying about ourselves. We are not studying about something else, about somebody or something out there, but we are studying about the very essence of our own being. And that can be done in this way, and it can also be done once we have understood the mantras, we have studied them, then to pronounce them again and again like we do in japa. If somebody just remembers one mantra, if he can just commit to memory one mantra, then he does japa all the time with the same mantra. But if we can commit into memory more than one mantras, then why should our japa be limited just to one mantra? So this is also a form of japa. Maharshi Vedavyasa, there in his commentary on the Yoga Sutras, he explains this beautifully, that To recite, swadhyaya is also the recitation of mantras which purify our mind content. So the section that we are now studying, the section that we have been studying, 2 mantras we have already studied in this section, the 15th one and the 16th one, and 2 mantras in this last section still have to be studied, the 17th one and the 18th one. Something that was already made very clear at the beginning of this section was this section is about, it's a preparation for the final moment of one's life. Of course, in the first 2 mantras, this final moment of death was mystically also explained as the extinction, as the blowing out of the limited sense of ego, limited sense of identity which we have in our body, in our mind. And I discussed those mantras in great detail from that perspective. But now this mantra that we are about to study, the mantra that is now about to come, very clearly mentions that inevitable moment and what happens in that inevitable moment as a preparation for that inevitable moment. So a very rough translation of this next mantra which we are about to study, which you can see the translation here. Now may the wind, inner prana, return into the immortal wind, the omnipresent prana. Let this body be reduced to ashes. What this mantra is speaking about, the next mantra is speaking about the principle of activity within our body, which is sometimes also referred to as Kriya Shakti, the potential to act. The potential to act, Kriya Shakti, the power to act, the capability to act. This Kriya Shakti which is present within this body, may it merge back into the universal principle of activity. This is a very, how should I say, if we boil down, if we take the essence of the philosophical discussion that we find in various commentators, in various commentaries, this is really the essence that this mantra is about, that let this principle of activity within me, which is present within me, which makes my physical body active, capable of executing action, willful action, may that principle which is present within me may it unite into the universal principle of activity, the omnipresent principle of activity, which is immortal, which transcends death, which never falls into the realm of death. And as far as the sharira is concerned, sharira, which has been translated here in this translation as the body. But sharira in Sanskrit literally means that which will be destroyed anyway. Shri means the root from which the word sharira. Sharira is the common Hindi Sanskrit word for the body. We use it in Hindi language also for the body. And it has been derived from the root Shri, which means to be destroyed, to perish, the perishable aspect of our being. So let that perishable aspect of my being be reduced to ashes, to the ashes. So this is this mantra. We can pronounce it first let us pronounce it, and then we will get into the discussion of some of the ideas that are deeply buried within this mantra, which we meditate upon when we meditate on these mantras. So, Vayur, 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 Anilam, 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 Amritam, 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 Athedam, 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 Bhasmantam, 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 Shariram, 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 Om, 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 Kratosmara, 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 Kritam smara, Kritam smara, Kritam smara, Kratosmara, 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 Kritam smara, Kritam smara, Kritam smara. Om Vayuranilamamritamethedam Bhasmantag Shariram. Om Kratosmara, Kritag smara, Kratosmara, Kritag smara. First of all, one thing about this mantra, I've often said that Om is considered as Mantra Raja, the king of all mantras. And why is that the case? That will become clear when we will study the various discussions that are there around the symbolical significance of the letter Om, which in various Upanishads it is there. Mandukya Upanishad specifically is dedicated completely to this Om. It is considered to be the very essence of every mantra, and therefore it is pronounced at the beginning of every mantra. A mantra is considered to be incomplete as long as Om is not pronounced together with that mantra, because within Om all the mantras reside. The mantra that we pronounce after Om just puts into words, expresses in words something that is already present within this symbol, this monosyllable Om. But there are very few mantras of the Vedas in which the monosyllable Om is actually clearly pronounced within the mantra itself. Right now, there might be, I can't remember all the Vedic literature, it is huge. But right now, from what I have studied, I can only think of two places where the word Om, in one place it is as part of a discussion where Savita, the Lord of Light, says Om in place of yes, acceptance. Yes, because Om is also the Sanskrit word for yes. We use it also in common Sanskrit speaking. For example, if I would have asked my master, should we have lunch? He would just answer Om, which means yes. Am or Om both mean yes in Sanskrit. Am is more mundane and Om is more mystical. But both mean the same thing. Yes, acceptance. So that is, in one place it has been used in this sense, and here it has been used as a symbol. I will come back to this when we study that part of the mantra. Otherwise, the letter Om is very rarely ever used within the Vedic literature within a mantra, within a verse. It's always at the beginning of the verse, never somewhere in between. And interestingly enough, in this mantra, which is the mantra about death, the most auspicious letter comes within it, and then the second most auspicious word of Sanskrit language, which is Atha, has also been used here. Most teachings of the master start with Atha, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Now the teachings on yoga commence. It symbolizes a new start, a new beginning. It also stands for the present moment, because it also means now. So if we take the essence of Om, which is acceptance, and the essence of Atha, which is a new beginning, or which is to be in the present moment, and that is why these two words have become the most sacred, holy words. When in Kailas Ashram, where I used to study, when we used to have holidays, when the season of holidays used to start, when we used to have a lot of holidays, like 5-10 days, the idea of those holidays was actually to meditate upon what we have studied, what we have to do manana, to do critical analysis and nididhyasana, meditation on what we have done, shravana, what we have heard from the masters. So the holidays give us this space of time in which we don't have to go to the teachers, we don't have to go to the masters, but we can just be with ourselves and contemplate on what has to be studied. So in the last class, before the new section of before the holidays used to start, we used to recite a very specific set of shlokas, a very specific set of verses, mantras at the end of the class. And one of these mantras was Omkaraschatha Shabdascha Dvavetau Brahmanapura Kantham Bhitva Viniryatau Tasman Mangalikavubhau, that in the beginning of the creation, when the creator principle created this universe, he just pronounced, that principle just pronounced two things. Om, which is the universal primordial sound. If we bring together all sounds, for example, if you listen to the roaring of the ocean, or if all sounds would come together, it would sound like this primordial sound of Om. So this was the first sound that came out, and then the second sound was the sound of Atha. 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 This sound, which symbolized a new beginning. And that is why these two words are considered the most auspicious words. So these two words, and now I really can't think of any other mantra in the Vedas in which these two words, the most auspicious words, which are considered the most auspicious words in Sanskrit language, come in one mantra. But it is this mantra in which Vayuranilam Amritam Atha Idam. Atha. That word Atha first of all comes, and then Om Kratosmara, the word Om also comes. These two words come. Now, Vayuhu Anilam. Vayuhu, may this wind, Vayu means wind. Even in Hindi language, we use the word Vayu for wind. Always get confused because not Vayu but Vayu, and not wind but wind. Because in Sanskrit we pronounce Va, and in English we pronounce Vi. So sometimes I get confused. Vayu. Vayu means wind. However, as I pointed out in the very beginning, that Vayu, the root Vayu has been, the root of Vayu, which means the word Vayu has been derived from the root Va. Va, which means to move. So that which moves, that is called Vayu. The principle of breath, which constantly moves within me. Even when I fall asleep, that is something that does not fall asleep. So that principle within me. However, in ancient Vedic language, it becomes sometimes very confusing, because the word Vayu, which generally means only wind, can also stand for thunderbolt, because that also moves very fast. And it can even stand for the sun, because that also moves, that also travels on a tremendous speed. So that also constantly moves. So sometimes the word Vayu has been used in all these meanings in the Vedic literature. However, here, what does it stand for? If you remember one of our previous discussion when we were studying the fourth verse, the fourth mantra, and for those who have not heard those discussions, they are on YouTube. So anybody willing can check it out. So when we were studying the fourth mantra, Tasmin Napo Matarishva Dadhati, within that consciousness, Matarishva, that principle which travels constantly in this space out there, that supports all our actions. So there I discussed about that principle to which we referred as Sutratman. If you remember this word, Sutratman. Sutratman, which means the life force which is present in the form of the wind, which is seen as the thread that strings everything together. That is like the thread that strings all of us in this world. All created entities are strung together. Can we say that? The past of string will be strung, yes. Are strung together by this. So sutra means a thread, sutra means a string, and Atman means that aspect of the self, that aspect of the universal principle which strings all of us together. So a very literal translation of the word Sutratman can be the string soul, or rather the string self, the string-like self. In other words, the world spirit. Because this Ishavasya Upanishad is a very short collection of teachings, it is one of the shortest and therefore also very condensed and very short, and the teachings are deep, but to explain them, a lot has to be explained, and therefore this is the first Upanishad, and the 10th Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is the longest and the biggest, is really like a detailed commentary on this first Upanishad. There this idea of Sutratma has been explained through a small story that must have occurred in a country called Madra. The story there is about a country called Madra. Madra was a country in the northwest of India, northwestern side of India, presently approximately where today Pakistan. The Greeks knew it, the Greeks, the ancient Greek historians, because when Alexander attacked India, he completely destroyed the capital of the Madra country, and it is historically stated that he razed to the ground the capital city of the kingdom of Madra and killed all the inhabitants. So there the Greek historians, they refer to it as Sagala, and on the base of that it is said to be the city of Sialkot today in Pakistan, which is known as the city of Sialkot in Pakistan. So there, this discussion between somebody called Kabandha, his name is Kabandha, and he was the son of Atharva. Atharva is the name of a great rishi, also the seer of Atharva Veda, one of the 4 Vedas. And in ancient Persian culture, in ancient Zoroastrian culture, Atharvan simply means a fire priest, a priest who takes care of the perpetual fire burning within a Zoroastrian fire temple. They are called as Atharvan. So it is somebody who is called Kabandha, the son of Atharvan, and to him, he is himself a great master, a great scholar, and he comes to a great teacher there who was a teacher of fire sacrifices, rituals of fire worship. His name was interesting, very similar, and it is actually the basis of this, on the base of this, that some people believe that Patanjali must have belonged originally also to the area of Pakistan, because his name was Patanchala Kapya. Patanchala, the son of Kapi. So this shows that this name was already prevailing in that area, and therefore Patanjali must have belonged to that area as well, based on this. So Patanchala Kapya, who was a great teacher of fire sacrifices, a priest, and his huge group of students who used to come to learn from him the method of worshipping the light, worshipping the fire in the Vedic way. However, as you know, that sometimes these priests, they lack an understanding of the deeper essence. And this is what happens in this case, that the teacher who used to train the priests, to him this master came and he asked the master, the great mystic, who was aware of the deeper essence, asks the teacher of rituals and his students that, "Oh, my friends, do you know that thread? You are wearing this sacred thread." This is essential. You cannot perform a fire ritual, at least you cannot officiate as a priest without having this sacred thread. "But do you know that thread which threads all of us together? Do you know that thread? Have you ever meditated upon that thread by which all these beings are threaded or strung together? Do you know that thread which strings all of us together? Do you know that thread which strings together all our bodies, all the limbs of our bodies, in the absence of which all our physical limbs would fall apart? Do you know that thread? Do you know that thread which is the connection which connects this life with the next life? Which, in other words, which is the connecting principle between this present life and the next life?" He asked these three questions. Do you know the thread which strings all the beings together? Do you know that thread which strings all our limbs together? And do you know that thread which connects this body with the next body which we will have in our next life? What is that thread? Are you aware of that thread? This is the first set of questions that he asks. And then, of course, he also asks that, do you know the inner ruler present within you, which inspires all actions, all thoughts, and all words within you, but of which you mostly remain unaware? These are the questions that he asked to that priest, that teacher of priests, that, how should I call him, that chancellor of this college, or the headmaster of this college to train priests into the worship of light. And none of his students could give an answer. And then he himself, the mystic, he says that is very sad, that you don't know these two principles, the principle that strings all of us together and the principle that is present within each one of us and inspires all our thoughts, words, and deeds. It is sad that you are not aware of that, because someone who is aware of that, and someone who has experienced that, someone who meditates on that, somebody who is conscious of that principle, I consider that person to be Brahmavit, the knower, the true scholar of the Vedas. I know him to be the one who knows the essence of this existence. I consider such a person to know all the luminous beings. I consider such a person to know the essence of all teachings. I consider such a person to know the essence of all beings. And I consider such a person to know his own essence. Atmavit. So like this he says, Sabrahmavit. He is the one who knows the essence of the teachings, or who knows consciousness. Salokavit. He is the one who knows the essence of this realm. Sadevavit. He is the one who knows the essence of the luminous entities which you are worshipping. Savedavit. He is the one who knows the essence of the teachings of the masters. Sabhutavit. He is the one who knows the essence of all beings. And Saatmavit. He is the one who knows the essence of himself. Sasarvavit. I must say that he is the one who knows the very essence of everything. That is how he continues, and then they all come to him and say, please, now you need to explain this to us. And then he explains it. And that is the rest of the discussion that is there in that 7th section of the 3rd chapter of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. I will just touch upon that aspect which is related to Sutratma, in which he says, Vayur Vai Gautama Tat Sutram. This principle which constantly moves, this principle of constant movement, to which he refers to by the word Vayu, which symbolically can be understood by this principle of wind, because wind constantly moves. But you see, I have always pointed this out, that in the Vedic context, every word that we use has 3 meanings. I pointed this out earlier also. One is the physical meaning. The second one is what we call the luminous, the divine meaning. And the third one is the meaning in which we find something within ourselves corresponding to that, an internal meaning. That is the deepest meaning. So the wind out there, the physical wind, that is the first meaning, the physical meaning of the word Vayu. But then the second meaning is, because everything in the understanding of the Upanishadic masters is a manifestation of consciousness. So consciousness which is present within that wind, that is the second meaning. And then the wind in consciousness that is present within me, this prana, that is the ultimate and the third meaning. So that is what the word Vayu, when he says that Vayur Vai Gautama Tat Sutram, that wind is that thread. Because it is this principle of movement which keeps together this realm, all beings, our own body, and which also connects us with our future birth. It is this principle of movement. This principle of movement. Sarvani cha bhutani sandribdhani. It is this principle of movement, this sutratma, this thread self, by which all the beings are held together. And that is why he refers to an expression that was there, after a person leaves his body. In ancient India, they used to say, Vyasram shitani asya angani, which means his limbs have become loose. Like when you remove a thread, then all the pearls, they become loose. So similarly, after this principle of movement has left the body, every limb becomes loose and starts to disintegrate. It is that principle of movement which is active within the physical body, to which we refer to by the word prana. Yes, wind is one aspect of it, but let me make it very clear that even when the masters use the word prana, sometimes for them prana is not only the wind, but it also consists of heat and water. These 3 elements together give rise to prana within our body, this life principle. Wind, heat, and water. These three elements play a very important role in giving rise to this principle of movement for which the word prana is used. So it is that which is being referred to here. Or for example, like another example that the masters also give, is a puppet. If you leave the strings, then the limbs of the puppets collapse, become loose, But as long as the string is held, they are moving. So it can also be taken in that sense, or it can also be taken in this sense, in both senses, because strings, both have strings. So it can be explained in both ways. So the idea of Sutratma is that which holds everyone together. That is the idea of Sutratma. And when we use also the word prana, the very specific word prana, when we refer to the same thing, because prana ultimately means the entity which permeates all efforts, actions, without which any action or effort would be impossible. And why does it mean so? Why does the word mean this? Is because the root ana, which is there in all the 5 words for prana, apana, vyana, samana, udana. In all the 5 names, that one common word which is there, ana, the prefixes changes. Pra in prana, apa in apana, vi in vyana, sam in samana, and ut in udana. But the root is everywhere the same, which is ana. And that root means to make an effort. Aniti, which means he makes an effort. And sometimes, of course, yes, it also is used to refer to the most primary effort that a person has to make any other effort. And what is that effort? The most primary effort that a person has to make any other effort. What is that effort? The effort of breathing. If we don't make that effort of breathing, then no other effort is possible. That is why breathing is the most basic effort. We can't even experience the deep relaxation of sleeping if that effort doesn't go on. It has to go on. So that is the very fundamental basic effort that a person has to make any other effort, and that is why the root ana and its verbs also mean to breathe in and to breathe out. But the very meaning of the root, and this is why, now just tell me, how can somebody just understand the Upanishads, their terminology, their teachings, their internal application without going deeper into the words, into the language? I can't see that happening. Sorry, but I can't see it happening. I just can't see it happening. These are the same masters that then also will teach us that don't get lost in words, because that is the final pitfall that scholars face. A person has to transcend that also. But for the sake of meditation, if a person can use, this grammatical knowledge of Sanskrit language, because the very grammarians were the same masters that were great meditators, and they really created a language of meditation. And that is why no other language can compare Sanskrit when it comes to this mystical aspect of being. I'm not advocating any kind of sanctity or, a religious sanctity that sometimes people give to a particular language. I'm not speaking about that. I'm speaking about the beauty of the language as a tool, that how it takes us deeper into the analysis of the teachings, and we find its application in ourselves when we use Sanskrit language as a tool. That is the beauty of it. So
when you start teaching.
I cannot teach everything. I cannot teach everything. Limited time. But I hope so, very soon. Let's see. So prana is the principle which permeates all our activities, which is the very source of all our activities, which is that universal principle of action, the universal principle of activity, which is there present within every atom, within the solar system, within each and every cell of our body, within each and every limb part of our body. Anything that stops following that principle has to be thrown out of this body for this body to live further. This body cannot live with dead particles. It has to get rid of it. As long as something loses that Sutratman within it, one has to get rid of it. So that is that principle, and it is that entity which the meditators, not of the Upanishads, but of the texts that come before the Upanishads, because the Upanishads are really the quintessential teachings, but the collection of teachings which are known as the Aranyaka sections of the Vedas, which the word Aranya means forest. So the sections which were taught and studied in forests, where a person in an environment that was conducive for meditation, in those sections, the ultimate object of meditation, now we are talking about an object, like Patanjali here becomes an object of our meditation, an object of our worship. So for them, the ultimate object of meditation and worship, meditative worship, was this principle, prana. And they saw all other objects of worship that they had been worshipping, whatever else they had been worshipping, different manifestations, different forms, if they would have come from different traditions. Some would have been Shaivas, so they have been worshipping Shivas, different gods and goddesses. But when they come there, each one of them was worshipping that principle of prana, of which their individual name and form was seen as simple manifestation. So that is where, in the process of meditation, all these different traditions found unification. So that was that one single luminous entity underlying all other luminous entities which were earlier worshipped or meditated upon earlier. So that is that one essential entity. The masters make it clear again and again. So like this, this discussion on Sutratma, about which this mantra is, when the word Vayu refers to the Sutratma, the principle of movement within me, and Anila, again the same root, Ana, which is in Prana, the principle of movement, again the same word. May it merge back into the omnipresent, immortal principle of movement out there. Which you can say it in other words. What is the principle of movement? Energy. Shakti. Which is eternal. The body dies, but the energy, the Shakti, the potential that is within me, energy can never be destroyed. Even science accepts it today. It can be transformed. It can have a new form, but energy can never be destroyed. So this energy which is present within me, may this energy be merged into the energy that is present out there. And can we meditate on this Sutratman when we are doing our asanas? That is the whole idea. When Patanjali speaks of Ananta Samapatti, in the asana practice, in the sutras of asana, Prayatna Shaithilya and Ananta Samapatti. That to meditate on that infinite entity, what is it? It is that Sutratma. It is this Sutratma that he is talking about. And Shankaracharya points this out beautifully in one of his collection of teachings. He says that when I move around in this world, in my walking, when I walk around, when I'm active, when I walk around, then I meditate upon myself as being a wave on the surface of the ocean of consciousness. I meditate upon myself as being a wave. A wave is made out of that ocean. It arises out of that ocean, moves on top of that ocean for a while, and then breaks down and merges back into it. So when I move around in this world, I meditate upon myself as being a wave on top of this ocean of consciousness. When I'm sitting in an asana, completely still, stable, then I meditate upon myself as being a pearl strung together by the thread of consciousness. I meditate upon myself as being a jewel or being a pearl put into place or strung together by the string of consciousness, by Sutratman. Again, I meditate upon this. When I experience the external objects through my senses, I meditate upon it as if I am looking at myself. I am looking at myself. I am enjoying, Hrishtosmi, I am enjoying by looking at myself. And when I fall asleep, then I consider myself to have been completely merged into that ocean of peace and bliss. Like this antarnishto mumukshuhu, somebody who is desirous, only someone who leads his life in this awareness. Such a person is truly a mumukshu, someone who desires freedom, who has found the home within himself. I'm trying to paraphrase Shankaracharya as literally as I can. Of course, the poetical beauty in which Shankaracharya presents it in Sanskrit language, because again, Sanskrit language is poetically an extremely beautiful language. You can choose extremely beautiful words, and the meters are beautiful. So, Atmam bodhes tarangos smyahamiti gamane bhavayan nasanastha samvit sutrano vidho manirahamiti va smindriyartha pratitau. Like this. He, in a beautiful meter which can be sung beautifully, he expresses this and relates the idea of Sutratma with being seated on an asana, in an asana. So we'll come back to this mantra again. I made preparation once again, because when I touched upon Sutratma earlier, I didn't go into this detail. So once again, I discussed this idea of Sutratma in some greater detail with more clarity, and we will come back to this mantra again in our next section. So these are the kinds of things that even if it is just one mantra, Vayu Ranilam Amritam Athedam Bhasmanta Gun Shariram, but then all these deep feelings, deep ideas, when they come, when they start arising naturally, while we pronounce this mantra, and we enter such a state of mind which has produced these thoughts and ideas, then we can say that we have accomplished the mantra. What we say, mantra siddha. The mantra has been accomplished. The mantra has been made siddha. But for that, a lot of japa, a lot of contemplation, a lot of repetition with understanding, and a lot of contemplation and meditation is required. But as we go deeper into our asana practice, these are the things that a person, while sitting in, you can call it, sitting in Shirshasana for 4 hours, 6 hours, what do we do with closed eyes? I was amazed. Lisa Wolford, she was the only one I have seen being in Shirshasana for 2-3 hours, just here in the corner. And just even to, she's a very small lady, one of the very senior Iyengar yoga teachers. And for 1 or 2 hours, just here in this corner, Shirshasana. And, just to look at her was, I haven't seen Guruji doing Shirshasana. He used to watch the class in Shirshasana. Okay, so I was not fortunate enough to see him, but I have seen her for a very, very long time, and it's really, even just to look at her was a peaceful and new experience for me. Just to look at her. So a day will come when I will be able to be in Shirshasana. A day somewhere. I know I have to work tremendously hard to reach that day in my life. But when that day comes, then this is what I'm going to do in my Shirshasana. So I'm waiting for that day. Okay, I can still take a few questions. Comments? Yes. Sorry? Everything, yeah. Indra's net, yes. Sorry?
It sounds so linear. It's only one linear, and it must be a net.
Yeah. Of course, the word Indrajala is used. You see, the point of the Vedic masters is that it is one essence. So even if it's a net, then it is made of one single thread. That oneness is so important for them. For them it is ekameva dvitiyam, one only, not two. However, Indrajala we use in the context of Maya. This multiplicity. We use the word Indrajala in that context, in the context of multiplicity. So we could beautifully say, because Indro Maya bhih pururupa iyate, Indra means this essential consciousness with the help of Maya, with the help of energy, becomes all this, manifests in the form of this multiplicity, that oneness with the help of energy, with the help of Shakti, transforms or manifests in the form of multiplicity. So you could beautifully show that it is that one thread which underlies this net of multiplicity. So yes, it is, when we look at it from this perspective of multiplicity, it looks like a net. It looks like a mesh of threads. But that is confusing. That confusion gets resolved when we realize that this mesh of multiplicity has its foundation in that oneness. And that is what they were referring to as that one string which strings together, because you can have hundreds of pearls, but the string which strings together all those pearls will be one and the same. So it is that oneness which is most important for them. So it is basically, in another way, it is the same thing they are emphasizing, which, for example, the Jewish prophets, again and again they were trying to emphasize that oneness. That is the whole story. All the prophets, again and again, do the same thing. Here we find exactly the same thing. To one of the classes that I gave in between, on Ekatattva Abhyasa, as being the very foundational practice of all practices of yoga, Ekatattva Abhyasa, to bring our awareness from multiplicity into the one essence. So it's always to lead us from the many, from the ever-changing many, into the immortal one essence. So in that sense, it is one Sutratman. Of course, we are using these words just to grasp the essence, So when we refer to it as a thread, it doesn't mean that it is linear in the sense that it is extremely linear. I mean, it is an omnipresent entity. But in that sense, like a thread, we always say a drishtanta, an example is one-sided. We have to take that side which it tries to convey, not every side, otherwise it becomes confusing. Thread is also linear, but we have to take that side, that which strings everything together, like thread. That is Sutra. So in that sense, we have to take it. Does that somehow make it clear? Thank you.
What was that poem by Shankaracharya, and where can we...
It is from the Shatashloki. In Daily Vedanta, he often quotes Shatashloki. Shatashloki is a beautiful, there are 100 shlokas in which Shankaracharya really presents the very essence in beautiful, poetical, experiential, meditative language, the essence of the Upanishads and the Vedas. A beautiful work by Shankaracharya, poetically beautiful from its meters, from its beautiful of choice of words, the aesthetic beauty is really immense, and the depth, the meditative depth as well. These are the Prakarana Granthas, which at some point maybe we can also start studying.
Yeah.
There's so much that can be studied, but your time is limited, first of all, and my time is also limited. All our times in this world itself is limited. But this ocean of knowledge is limitless. Then it starts becoming more and more beautiful. That is where the masters sometimes become a little bit uneasy, and they say that, don't create again an illusionary world out of scriptures, because people are lost in an illusion in an illusionary world of wealth, family, relationships, and then you get away from that and you come to the scriptures, and then you create a similarly illusionary world in the scriptures. And so the yogic masters, again and again, they say the only purpose of studying the scriptures, Haribhadra Suri, this 8th century master, he reminds that the only purpose of studying the scriptures is to learn to practice yoga correctly. That is the whole purpose. Don't create a world, an illusionary world. Don't create Shastra Samsara, samsara which means illusionary world, out of the teachings. Don't do that. So one has to be aware of that pitfall into which sometimes scholars fall. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't study. Every technique has a pitfall. When you get stuck in it, and when you enjoy it for its own sake, when you start to enjoy the step and don't want to leave it, don't want to go beyond it, you just want to be on that step because the wind on that step is so pleasant, so beautiful. And the higher you go, the more beautiful it becomes. Then you don't want to leave it. That is when that step itself, which was a step, becomes a pitfall. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't take that step. We have to take that step to raise beyond, but we also have to have the guts, the strength to leave it. And so when we look at Patanjali's teachings, at the teachings of the masters, it is always grasping something and then leaving it by grasping something higher, then leaving it by grasping something higher. Like this, a person ascends. Though each level has its own, the deeper we go, the closer we go to that inner source of all beauty, the more beautiful it becomes. And then we want to be there because we think this is it. This is it. This is what I was looking for. And the journey stops.
This stepping ladder image, this is the mention in the Vedas, or this is just a general idea that you're creating this image from?
I can't right now.
It's just interesting because
Yeah.
Schopenhauer took this
Mhm.
idea,
Mhm.
and then from that, Wittgenstein took this idea, and he ends the Tractatus, which is one of the more famous works of the last 20th century. And he talks about, my propositions are a ladder, and once you climb up the ladder, then you kick the ladder away. But it's very similar to this image. So I'm just wondering, since Schopenhauer was quite influenced by this, if there was some kind of...
Okay, I can't now. I can't say if the very specific image of a ladder has been used, but the idea of steps, that is prominent, very prominent in Upanishads. For example, in Mandukya Upanishad, the very meaning of the word pada, that Om has 4 padas. Padas actually mean steps. First pada, second pada, third pada, fourth pada. So they are the first letter A, the second letter U, the third letter Ma, and then the ultimate silence. These are like steps. So there the word pada, in the sense that you have a goal, and for that you have to take 4 steps. So it's the same thing, but with a very basic image. The image of a ladder has the sense of going somewhere up there, But this is just, rather than going within ourselves, the steps but it's the same thing, So there clearly I can see it being mentioned. Otherwise, I can't really know. Yeah.
Last year, you mentioned this as well.
Yeah.
The same thought.
I mean, various Vedantin masters have mentioned it, but since your question was about the original Upanishads and the Vedas, there I cannot find anything. But in the teachings of the yogic and Vedic masters, commentators, it is mentioned quite often.
It's kind of like it reminds me of when Buddhism talks about attachments, in a way. And in order to use the process, you have to get rid of this attachment, and then you can go more.
Yeah.
Just thinking about it when you were talking about it. And also like how even when you are like in a way going through a process, like a spiritual process, you have to always remind yourself in a way not to get attached, not to the process, and not like always, because then you will start.
That is a very, very, how should I say, a very constant theme, that we take a step, we like that step, we have some experience in that step, and then we fail to go deeper if we get attached to that step. This is something that, this is an idea we find particularly in the first chapter of the Yoga Sutras. We find it in the various discussions of the Upanishads. This is an idea which is a recurring idea, actually, again and again, which has been mentioned. Yeah. So, leave it here with this. Let us conclude with prayer for universal well-being. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi.